is a really rich site.
Yes.
It's an amazing story, and bear with my ignorance. I'm really anxious to find out more about the situation. And welcome very much to Conversations, where it's a pleasure to welcome to the program DHONDUP. He is a Tibetan. He has a very interesting story to tell. He's a board member of the U.S.-Tibet Friendship Committee, or U.S. Committee, which is a responsible group of people focusing on the situation as far as the country of Tibet is concerned. And he is a former official representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Nepal. And he's very knowledgeable of the country, and he's a musician. There's a great deal to talk about, and DHONDUP, welcome really very much to Conversation.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. We had a good evening the other night talking, and it was really insightful. I wonder if you could, we're going to anchor this on you personally, but so maybe you could, if you would, share your own personal background, where you were born and raised, and then we want to talk about Tibet, and then we also want to get into some of the aspects of music and so forth, which you're involved with, that is intrinsic to that country. But share your own personal background, if you would, please.
Thank you. I was born in Kham area. That is, Tibet consists of 3 provinces, Uzang, Kham, and Amdo.
And it's very big.
It's very big in size.
It's 4 times the size of Texas.
I believe so,
That's what it said on the official website.
Yes, it's very big, but very scarcely populated.
Yes.
So I was born in Kham Derge area. It's in the state of Kham. It's a very small village, but it was very beautiful, natural-wise. It's full of flowers and trees. So I was born and brought up there till I was 9.
Until you were 9.
9 or 10.
Right.
And then the communist invasion took place, and we couldn't just live there, so we had to flee our country.
They invaded in 1949, I think.
Yes, they did.
Now, the Dalai Lama was there until 1959.
59, yes.
Were you there during that period of time when the Chinese were beginning the occupation?
Yes.
Okay.
I was there when they first came, and the Tibetans tried to resist militarily as well as diplomatically.
Yes.
But in 1959, there was no hope.
Yeah.
And so that Dalai Lama had to leave, and most of the major Tibetan refugees that you will find in Nepal or India, they left then.
And Tibet has a unique culture. It is a nation that goes back thousands of years. The Chinese will try and say it's really Chinese historical claim to the territory.
Right.
But people in Tibet, in great numbers, the majority, feel as though they are an independent country that has been invaded by a foreign power, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true. That the
and occupied.
Yes, the Tibetans definitely believe that they were invaded by a foreign power and occupied against their will.
Yes.
Tibetan history goes back many centuries. Tibet has its own history, language, and during the 6th or 7th century, the
AD,
the 33rd king of Tibet married one of the Chinese princesses, and that's why Chinese believe that by marriage of the Tibetan king with a Chinese princess is the point when the Tibet became a part of China.
Could you share with us a little Tibetan, the language? Let's begin with language. The Tibetan language is unique. Is it related to Chinese? Is it related to Sanskrit? Where does it fit in as far as the language?
The whole Tibetan culture and language, written form comes from Sanskrit.
From Sanskrit.
Sanskrit.
Okay.
There's not a word of Chinese that we use. It's just Indo-European language.
It's Indo-European.
Yes,
okay, I didn't realize that.
It is. It's completely like a Sanskrit. Language is completely different. There is a lot of similarities in Burmese language. And Burmese, yes. But it's completely pure by itself. The 33rd King Songtsen Gampo, or during the 7th century, he sent about 19 students to India to learn that Sanskrit culture and language. So many died. They could not survive the climate and hardship of the movement. But few survived, and so went back to Tibet by qualifying, mastering all this Sanskrit language. So they went back to Tibet, and then they started writing a Tibetan own language script based on the Sanskrit or Indian script known as Devanagari.
I see. And prior to that was a Turco-Euro. Prior to that, and because the culture can be traced back thousands of years.
That's true.
A couple thousand years before Christ.
That's true.
There are cultural, and in those days, it was not the Sanskrit influence. It was because you're getting up close to the Gobi, I guess. You're getting up close to the steppe and that sort of thing into Central Asia.
I don't think there's a clear written form, but we had a prehistory.
Yes.
Pre-Buddhist history.
Pre-Buddhist, yeah.
Pre-Buddhist, that is known as Burns. And the Burmese are very rich in culture. So probably there may be some written form of a Burmese, but as far as the history goes, we don't have anything really that goes back that far. But the 7th century, that's witnessed the dawning of Tibetan language or having a written form of language.
And the long tradition is that they have a Buddhist tradition and that they are peaceful people in the Buddhist tradition, if I'm not mistaken, the culture.
That's true. The Buddhism is based on non-violence.
Yes.
So you cannot be violent if you are Buddhists. So technically, violence is prohibited in Buddha's doctrines.
Boy, that would be a good thing for the whole wide world, I believe, you know. And it's interesting because there was this invasion from China. You had Maoist, and it was based on Western dialectical Marxist materialism, and so forth. They had this ideology that they, as I understand, I'd like to get the story from you, they decimated many of the spiritual sites, the monasteries, and they would, as was their wont, to see, in the words of Marx, religion and these spiritual traditions as the opium of the people who don't understand that everything can be understood through the philosophy of dialectical materialism.
That's true.
And they began to impose that after their imposition in 1949, so early as that, just after Mao's revolution.
Yes, 1949 they started invading, but when they first came, they came with a great friendship. In the name of great friendship, they came that Tibet is backward and you need a social, economic development. We will build your road, we will build your hospitals, schools, and when everything is completed, Chinese will go back to China and the Tibetans will remain there.
It seems to me that's like colonial powers have said that throughout the decade, the millennia.
They cheated like this. This misled us. And then we thought that because we had historical centuries ties with the Chinese. We believed them.
You had trade ties going way back?
And so when we believed and they let them build roads, and then they started interfering into our internal affairs. And then they just did everything. They set up their courts, they set up their government administrative offices. Then they started undermining Tibetan way of life, and then it was too late.
Including all the spiritual traditions that have been so rich, and the traditions and there were clashes between their philosophy and the Tibet, and the raison d'etre, as it were, of the Tibetan nation.
The communists don't believe in anything. They are atheists, and they regard the religion or any cultural thing is opium in society.
It's opium of the people.
Opium of the society or the people. So they tried to erase all the Tibetan culture, like a cultural revolution. During this crazy time, they destroyed thousands of monasteries. I brought one excerpt here, and you can see from the video that I brought here. You will show this later. You will see that how the Dalai Lama himself felt, and how they destroyed this culture.
Now
religion.
He represented spiritual tradition that goes way back, was revered in the culture, and tried to be there. Let's just get it straight. From 1949 until 1959, thinking that there could be something worked out with this more powerful Chinese emphasis that was being exerted by the Chinese, and their power. They were more powerful in military economic terms than the
yeah.
Tibetans.
Yes.
So they were like overlords, and then they have more and more people come. So it just grew, their influence, and it became finally intolerable in the year 1959.
59, yes.
And there was an exodus of something like 100,000 that went with the
over
Dalai Lama.
100,000, yes.
Over 100. And you and your family were one of those? Or
yes.
Did you leave earlier than that? Or did you
we
live
left
through that?
a little early.
Okay.
A little early.
Okay. And it became intolerable.
Yes, I did. Just there was no any hope. And they wanted to arrest the Dalai Lama, put in jail. And they arrested all the government officials, learned, like the Chinese did, same as the Pol Pot in Cambodia did. They didn't want to get rid of all the learned ones.
Yeah, Pol Pot in the Cultural Revolution targeted the intellectuals too.
Intellectuals.
Yeah.
So all the street people became the owners and masters of the society. But those who are learned, who are realized people, who are criminals, so subjected to be vanished in prison or like got killed.
The dominant class to be overthrown. Yes. In the Marxist analysis and that sort of thing. Now, how many people were there, like, when you were growing up, how many people, the population of Tibet, and we said about something like 100,000 finally left. There must have been some people leaving as soon as the Chinese started coming, but what were the population figures? And again, let's stress, this is a huge expanse of the earth.
Yes.
4 times the size of the state of Texas, as large as...
1/4 of the United States.
Yeah, 1/4 of the United States. A gigantic land expanse,
it's a land. That's why the Chinese were there, attracted.
Yeah.
The Chinese overcrowded. Tibet is like population-wise 6 million.
Yeah, 6 million in 1949, you say?
6
million. So that's not very many people over such a vast expanse of land.
And you can travel for miles, days, without finding any breathing soul.
Without seeing anyone there. Yes. And if I'm not mistaken, it's a gigantic plateau. You have Lhasa as the capital city, and the plateau is something, I think I read in the literature, something on the average of over 14,000 feet in elevation. It's very high. And the rivers that feed something like 2 billion people rise in Tibet. Rivers, the water, fresh water that flows, it must flow to China, the Yangtze, and then also down into...
the 4 rivers rise from Tibet.
4
rivers.
What are they?
Indus, that goes to
Indus
Pakistan.
is from Tibet?
Yes.
Really? Okay, yeah.
And Brahmaputra.
Brahmaputra into Bangladesh.
India. Yes.
Yeah.
And then from
the
India.
Ganges?
Ganges. And then this Mekong River.
Mekong.
Mekong. That goes to,
to Vietnam?
Vietnam, yes.
Goes down to Vietnam,
yes,
raised in Tibet?
Yes.
Yeah, well, there's about 2 billion people live in the area.
And then Yangtze River that goes to China.
Well, the Yangtze.
So,
and
interestingly, interestingly, these 4 rivers originate from a mountain to the mouth of a peacock, elephant, a horse, or...
a yak?
No.
No.
There are 4 animals. A lion.
A lion.
Yes. 4 these animals, they come through the mind, and then because of on the way they get a lot of tributaries, then it becomes a bigger and bigger, and then finally it becomes a big river, but it starts a little stream.
Yes, that's
from
the way.
Mount Kailash.
The Mississippi River, which gets to be very big at New Orleans, it's up in Minnesota. You can just jump across it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's from a little thing, but it's the roof of the world in a very real sense.
It's
Tibet,
the roof of the world.
and a very interesting thing. And you had this invasion, and that should be maybe emphasized again. Because we have a United Nations. It was a country. It had its own diplomatic corps. It had its own... Did it have its representation in the United Nations ever, or it was invaded before it was able to do that?
That was kind of a mistake. We were not awakened that time. And it was too late because of the Chinese who are so influenced around, so they just they prevented us from representing to the United Nations.
Well, if they were there, the United Nations only got started in 45, and they're already putting the glomming onto, as it were, Tibet in 1949 already. Their influence is there. Now the input, they're coming. There are roads that connect into Sichuan, or is it Sichuan, the province to the in the west of China. There are roads that connect to Tibet.
Yes.
There are they macadam? Are they asphalt roads? Are they dirt roads? Is there a good ready land transportation between mainland China and...
It was a motorable, jeepable road.
Yeah, jeepable.
Yeah, right. But it was kind of a dirt road. But now I heard it's It's nicely done. I had like guitars.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff going on. We want to get back to your own life story and so forth, but I read a thing in the literature. Again, the literature is amazingly good. The site that you have, that you're a board member of, the site for that is really very rich. That's, again, it's U.S. Tibet Committee. No, but it's ustibet.org, I think, is the site where they could go. And that they're building a railroad. I understand there was one thing, I read it in great depth. They're building a railroad from China to, I guess, to Lhasa.
Right.
The Chinese are, to consolidate their hold on that territory. And that project, because apparently it has to go through thousands of tunnels or something, that tunnel, that project is the largest, most involved civil engineering project in the world, and is even larger than the Three Gorge Dam.
Yes.
Amazing that they're putting all that attention to bring a railroad to consolidate their hold, and that's an indication that they want this to become and be seen as part of China. It was invaded by them. They have. Why have the nations of the world not more readily been able to come to the support of the Tibetan nation that has been occupied by a foreign power? Do you remember we went into Kuwait in order to keep the occupying forces of Saddam Hussein, and we got a great alliance, and we did that in other places? Why have we not been able to rally to the cause of the Tibetan people more than we have? And I know it's a long, sad story, but maybe you could just touch upon some of the highlights of that geopolitical context.
Practical, it's geopolitical, and secondly, there's no oil in Tibet that we can go there. And Kuwait, there was oil, and it's very important. And the whole Western countries are dependent on oil, right? So how kind of, you know, highly dependent we are on the oil. So I think the Chinese invasion of Tibet is nothing but military and economy, right? There's they have no fact. And
they have no facts to back up their claim.
No,
they just took it. They just annexed. They
yes,
took it like
by force.
Like we took it from the Mohicans.
Right.
And so those kind of, I mean, you know, that kind of thing has happened.
But,
the Mohicans and the Arapaho and the Native American peoples who lived here, the Spanish, that's what's been going on a great deal. But it's a story that should be recognized, and it's one you're followed and that sort of thing, and that's what you're now. Go on a little bit with your own life story, if you could. You came out with your family. You were one of those 100,000 roughly that had to flee from the increasingly oppressive boot. I don't want to use lighter language that the Chinese represented as they got more and more favoring their own in that part of the world and occupying that part of the world. There's a resentment, I would presume. But could you share your own background? You went to India then, or?
Yes. I went to India, and the Dalai Lama opened some Tibetan refugee schools, boarding schools. I went there. I joined one of them in Darjeeling.
Darjeeling, they have tea.
That was in 1961, I think, when I first came to India. So
you would have been how old then?
I was about 12, 13 years
old. 12 or 13, and the whole family came.
My parents, and they stayed back in Bhutan.
They did in Bhutan.
Bhutan, yes.
That's that's.
It's a small kingdom.
Yes.
And my mother is still there. My other rest of family members still there in Bhutan.
In Bhutan.
Yes.
And do you get a chance to visit them?
Yes,
there?
I visit them whenever I can.
How are things there for the Tibetans in Bhutan?
They're very good.
Okay.
Very good. Bhutan is very peaceful, nice, prosperous country. Tibetans are very happy, and they're well treated there.
How are things in Tibet for the Tibetans? How are things in Tibet these days?
Well, you know, superficially the life is cut, you know, nice because they can do whatever they like, but in reality they have no freedom of expression of whatever they feel, and everything is under the dictation of the Chinese masters. So Tibetans have no any right to say anything. Right?
They do not have the right. Is there a resistance? Is there a protest? Is there a resentment on the part of the Tibetans that still smolders?
Yes, there are some underground movements, like in China itself. Look how many peasants are rising up.
Yeah,
but do we hear anything here? We
not
don't
much,
hear.
Not
right?
much. No.
Right, like that. So there are many resistance going on in China, but because of authoritarian rule, nothing can be, you know, sneaked out. So everything's sealed off. But definitely there are movements, secret movements, underground movements.
And resistance. Is there a resistance that is military? I mean, are there, like we have Iraq now, we have an occupation in Iraq, and we say we're going to do something for Iraq and that, and there's a resistance, bombs go off and that sort of thing. Well, is there a physical resistance, or is it so overwhelmingly powerful?
Well, a few years ago there was explosion.
Yeah.
And there was
one.
Well, I cannot say one or two, but there was one, for instance.
Yes.
There was an explosion. There is a bridge between Tibet and China.
Yeah.
And that was very badly damaged. And also because of the explosion, surround that building, there are many buildings are damaged. So that was, somebody exploded. And then before that, they distributed a lot of leaflets stating that Tibet is a independent, free Tibet. And the Chinese go home like that.
Yeah.
So
but do they still do that? Or can they do it if they do it? Would the people there, if they go and say, Chinese, like here, if we go, we can say, Mr. Bush, go home, or something. We can do here in the United States, you can do it.
You know that
do that
communist authoritarian house,
yeah.
You know that.
Right. But I've not been there, but
no,
it's a very...
communist, communist,
yeah.
authoritarian.
Tiananmen
you cannot
Square.
say even a word. Look in '89, how they massacred the students.
Yeah, in
right?
Tiananmen.
Yeah, Tiananmen Square, like it's similar.
Still there,
you cannot do, but then people still do it, right?
They still try to stand up to that and so forth. But here you got this example of Tibet, and you had that, and so you came there, and then you've come to, people have come to other parts of the world. You're here in the United States now, and you're doing that, and you're doing that. And you were, for a while, the official representative of the Dalai Lama, who apparently you know well.
Yes.
And that you did that for the country of Nepal, so you understand these things well and know the Tibetan community in diaspora, as it were, which is not that large, I guess. Most of the people are still in Tibet that were in Tibet when you were there as a child, right? Because they don't have the means to easily go and move around.
No, right.
And you think they're being oppressed by the Chinese overlords? Is that too strong a term?
Well, right now, if the Tibetans don't say anything but listen whatever the Chinese say, honestly, I think they are not bothered. But then, if they say a little bit like a human rights, then they are oppressed and they are just arrested, put in jail.
Yeah,
even they cannot talk about human rights,
can't even talk
let alone political rights.
So that's pretty oppressive. Yeah, that it is, and the issue is not. And the Dalai Lama has been a light onto the world. I just said to you, he's one of the 100 most influential people in the world, according to Time magazine. Right. He has been for a considerable period of time. Right. And we do have, because we have a little piece of tape that involves him, I guess, or that includes him, that talks to some of these issues, and maybe this would be a good time to try and show that. Now, what do you think, Don?
I think so. That's a good idea. Yes, so you can see that some Dalai Lama, and also you can see how the Chinese Dalai Lama felt when he met the Mao Zedong, and consequently what kind of destruction the Chinese inflicted upon Tibet. So if you view the tape a little bit, like for a few minutes, you will, the audience will understand.
Okay, well, we're talking now with DHONDUP. DHONDUP, that's good. The Don, we like to call him Don. He's a friend, and that sort of thing. And we're going to set that up. So if we could set that, what does it run, about 5 minutes or something? Or
no, it's 2 minutes.
2 minutes only. Okay,
it's a little part.
2 minute videotape. We're going to play some music a little later because you're also a musician.
Later, yes.
But we're going to run that. So if you could set that up and run that in the control room now, then please. Thank you.
Of Chairman Mao, he expressed the religion is poison and very bad for country. He pointed to 2 points. One, the great damage for population and the material development. So that moment, I really felt was quite bad that now, this person really the destroyer of Dharma, of religion.
And destroy religion they did. The once grand monasteries of Tibet were the cornerstones of the society. Some of them housed as many as 10,000 monks. They were Tibet's schools and universities. They were its libraries and medical centers. Over 95% of the 6,000 monasteries, temples, and shrines have been destroyed by the Communist Chinese. They've been pillaged and are now in ruins. Most of the lamas, monks, nuns, and teachers are among the 1.2 million Tibetans who have lost their lives because of the Chinese invasion. This ancient tradition, which the Communist Chinese are trying to eradicate in Tibet, is based on an individual training his or her mind to understand the deepest levels of existence.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's very disquieting and unsettling. Apparently, 1.2 million people have lost their...
Yeah.
You mentioned Pol Pot.
Yes.
You had 1 million people lost in Cambodia.
Right.
A horrible kind of decimation
That's
of
true.
a genocidal. Do you think
Yes.
it could be called genocidal, or is that too strong a term?
Yes, even the international jurists
Yeah.
they proclaimed that the Chinese commit genocide in Tibet.
Mm.
Definitely, the Chinese are labeled, charged as genociders.
What do the Chinese say to this charge? They'll just say, do they say we're bringing prosperity to a benighted people,
Well,
that we're going to bring them into the modern world, they're backward, they have ideas that, it's sort of like the white man's burden. You know, that thing that the British colonial people say, we're going to go and we're going to civilize people and bring them into the modern world. Like, some people think that's what neo-colonial things in Iraq are like, and that sort of thing, that attitude. Was it, you know, is that what the Chinese will say, or?
Well, well, the Chinese is kind of, such obnoxious, and they don't admit the destruction that they inflicted upon Tibet, how many lives they lost. But they, on the contrary, they say that they created like a socialist paradise on earth. So, the communists are very kind of stubborn.
Very what?
Stubborn.
Stubborn.
Yes, stubborn. So they will never admit. But internationally, you can see this now, the video. That was very ancient, one of the monasteries.
Yeah.
And I think they destroyed over 6,000 monasteries. 6,000, and that Gaden is one of them. They completely destroyed. I think out of 7,000, they left 5 kind of monasteries. Only. The rest of just destroyed.
Well, if they're coming and they've got a religion of their own, it's called dialectical materialism. They think all politics are out of the mouth of a gun, and that religions, they see religions, or they did, as myths and legends and fairy tales that people had that just don't understand the importance of the Marxist analysis. They have a religion of their own, a materialistic religion of their own. So they will walk roughshod over the populations that are, to them, backward. That's all. They're just backward. It's like we did with the Aboriginal cultures of the Americas. We did the same. We just decimated the Incan and the Aztec and the civilizations that were here, because they're and then in the name of colonialism that happened, and now China's emerging as, perhaps they're saying, it's going to become a great superpower.
Right.
Because it's now, and it's not any longer, I think, in real terms, any longer anything like a communist society. They have that political structure to keep control, but they're coming an all-out freebooting, laissez-faire, capitalist society, and are marketing to all the world. They're becoming more powerful in materialistic and military terms. So it's very hard to think in any kind of way to challenge this overwhelming power, much the same way that maybe the Hebrews or something would have wanted to challenge Rome back in the old, it's overwhelmingly powerful. So what is the likely outlook, politically and so forth, with the growing power of China and the adamancy that they have, and so forth? It must be pretty discouraging sometimes.
Well, yes, the Chinese are growing very powerful, and to get a chance to do a business with these billion people is very profitable. But on the other hand, the Chinese region now, right now, they exist in China is very brutal in terms of democracy, human rights, freedom, So long as you do not want anything about such things, then if you become like a puppet, then it's all right. But then if there is somebody who thinks a little bit about human rights, freedom, then
or
the
their,
Chinese will not
or their
tolerate.
own unique national culture and diversity from that which the overlords want to impose. That's always been the colonial officers are going to impose their system on someone, and then people resist in the name of their own cultural values.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, historically the Chinese are, very kind of, authoritarian from king to dynasty to dynasty.
Yeah.
So that's kind of chauvinistic attitude they have. But if you just want to make money and do business, then they wouldn't bother that much. But if you talk a little bit about human rights, then they will never tolerate you. But then, who knows, how long can keep on such a terrible, brutal regime. Look, the Soviet Union, what happened, right?
It finally did catch up with them.
Right.
That they were out of step with history. But now we have Francis. And then you have the Chinese, and the Chinese are becoming very close. All the venture capital people from the United States are in China now. They're getting hand in glove with China. United States is linking with China. And the United States is imposing a kind of view upon the world, particularly under the government of Mr. Bush. They're just going out. They just invaded Iraq. They invaded these other countries. They're going to bring their vision to the whole world. And they have this view in their world as well, which seems to not have very much concern for the individual integrity of various nations and so forth around the world. Witness the lack of attention to Tibet, I would say. I mean, in terms of why do they not protest that as much as they do something like...
about the current administration's like a policy towards Iraq, I think that's very unfortunate, I think. But one good aspect that I can see with George Bush is that he always talks about the freedom for everybody throughout the world.
Yeah.
So, America is very powerful. It's the only superpower. So if the President of the United States talks about freedom for everybody throughout the world, I think that has a positive impact. It's not a selective, right? It is not selective.
Well, it seems to me selected. They're not very interested in the freedom of Tibetans or the culture of Tibet, but they are interested in Kuwait because there's an economic interest, and that it is freedom is a big word that is not used. I mean, it's not used. It's used selectively in order to advance their own thing. Rome used to talk about how they're going to bring civilization to all the people that they conquered and held. That sort of thing. Or the British used to. The British used to do that in India. That we're bringing. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing. But the uniqueness of the culture. Now, one shining light has been the Dalai Lama. He is a person that's recognized throughout the world as a force for peace. And he holds to the idea that there can be a independent Tibet that can get out from under the control. Or what is the position that he is the leader, a spiritual leader of your community? What is the feeling, and what are the feelings as far as you get it from the people who are still in Tibet, the Tibetans, who are, as far as this question of the possibility...
Well, you're talking about the Dalai Lama, for instance. The Dalai Lama has
a world leader,
Dalai Lama has a policy towards Tibet. That is, right now what he says is that Tibet is kind of a part of China, and so Tibet must have a meaningful autonomous power and the facilities. It's not right now. The Chinese even say that Tibet is autonomous, but there is always Chinese dictator, and it's just like a name.
Autonomous region, like you said in the Soviet Union, or Oblast, or something.
But Dalai Lama thinks that if he should get some sort of a meaningful autonomous rights, so that the Tibetan people can maintain and manage their own life, and I think he's ready to give foreign and defense, all the security affairs in the hand of Chinese. But the culture, economic, and all these internal affairs, Dalai Lama is ready to accept and manage by the Tibetans themselves.
Is it possible for you to go to Tibet? Would it be dangerous for a Tibetan, or is it dangerous for anyone, let's say, is Amnesty International able to go?
Mm-hmm.
Can they check on the conditions of imprisonment? Can they check on the conditions? Do they get a track record from Amnesty and so forth? And then the Chinese are having this awful thing with the Falun Gong. It's really hard to understand. The
Right.
spiritual tradition, any spiritual tradition that raises its head runs against the authoritarianism of the state. And so is there an upwelling at all against the heavy-handedness of the Chinese empire?
Well,
Rome did finally fall.
Falun Gong is, you know, a kind of example. Like
Yeah.
they do not become violent, but they through a peaceful kind of movement. I think that then the Chinese communist regime, they think that they get kind of threatened by this peaceful movement. So you do not necessarily have to really rise up with arms, but through such a spiritual, peaceful movement, even the communists gets afraid of.
Hasn't Buddhism had deep roots in China over the long history? There was a great deal of Buddhism.
Many
was a very important.
Many dynasties were Buddhist. Like.
Now they see any spiritual thing like Falun Gong, if it's just practice for health, that's okay. But anything that has anything to do with a spiritual kind of connotation, Buddhism or any of the traditional spiritual traditions, seems to be something that they're very worried about.
Yeah, they're worried. For instance, they have more or less rationed the number of monks in the monastery. Like before, when the Tibet was independent, each monastery can have thousands and thousands of monks.
Yes.
Like 10,000, 7,000.
As they had over the centuries.
Yes.
Yes.
But nowadays, in theory, in the Chinese Communist Constitution, they think now they have every Tibetan, every Chinese have religious freedom, but in reality they don't have. Like a Dalai Lama's picture, you cannot have.
You cannot have
If you have a Dalai Lama's picture, it is illegal.
In Tibet?
Yes, and anywhere in China too.
In China?
And,
really? You can't have the picture of Dalai Lama up on your wall?
No.
What happens if you do?
They will come and arrest you.
They will arrest you and put you incarcerate you
jail,
for a picture of the Dalai Lama?
Yes.
That's a not good thing. Dalai Lama is a beautiful guy.
Yeah, but so we are talking about the communists,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And the communists, the constitution. And they said they have religious freedom, but they don't. So that's what I mean, trying to prove.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that each monastic can have not more than certain number of monks.
Really? Yeah.
Yes. So their kind of religious freedom in the Chinese constitution is meaningless.
So Soviet Union fell in 1989, and they used to have, and the spiritual traditions are beginning, although it looks to begin like Moscow begins to look like some sort of robber baron kind of mafia-run kleptocracy that took over, and this capitalist model. But there is beginning to emerge somewhat the Christian traditions that were important in Russia, the Orthodox traditions. They did begin to come. The fact that they're so fearful of this Falun Gong, the Chinese, do you think that this whole, and then if you took it further, if you could, I want to start talking about the music pretty quick because that's important to you, but if you take this materialistic view of the world, you have a Marxist view that was part of Mao's thing and that kind of thing, that's transmogrified into what in the West, you have a fundamentalist, a market fundamentalist view of the world that represents the leaders of the Western model, the American-led Western model. It's pretty materialistic. They have some support from some fundamentalist Christians, that sort of thing, but it's very fundamentalist in terms of the economic structure, and that is in place. Mr. Fukuyama's written a book that it's the end of history. We've got a model in place that is for now until the end of time. And all of these spiritual traditions and things like that are going to be subsumed ultimately within a political, economic dialectic that sees the market and all materialistic forces as the really important forces that move history. Do you think that overall dominance that is asserted by the Chinese and the United States now particularly, and are asserting themselves on the world, is going to be ever challenged by masses of people who find the flaws just as there were flaws found within the Soviet model in Soviet Union times?
Well,
that the system that claims legitimacy may be fundamentally and structurally and a challenge, and qualitatively yet transformations are going to come. They're going to recapture the justice for the great mass of the people.
I don't know if there will be people.
Or are we going to have to live under the yoke of Rome forever?
you know, I can tell you that I don't know whether there will be such a people that will rise up to throw off the yokes of all this capitalism, but I can tell you one thing, that we are responsible to our consequences. Whatever we do, we are responsible. So we have to pay our consequences of our thought, our
Dharma.
action.
Dharma.
Not necessarily Dharma. Not necessarily. Whatever you do, you're responsible.
Okay, okay.
Right? So there is consequences.
Okay, yeah,
right?
Yeah, okay.
I'm not talking about Dharma.
Okay, okay.
But we are responsible to what we do. So you can see this changes that take place throughout the world. Not necessarily people rise up, but there is something consequence that shapes naturally.
And there's something among the masses of the people, if we talk about real freedom, because we don't really have freedom. It's like a kind of plutocracy everywhere runs things. A few people run everything. You really don't have a real democracy where everybody's involved in terms of a liberated context for their own individual initiatives and thoughts and so forth. There's a qualitative change still blowing in the wind, as Bobby Dylan used to say, that may be a surprise to the people who think they've got a system that's going to be able to impose that upon all the world and turn all the world into investment bankers or something like that. But anyway, okay, I'm sorry what's happened. I'm sorry what you had to suffer, you and your family and the country, and we wish you the best in terms of what can be done under the circumstances.
The 6 million of Tibet are still suffering. You know. I mean, one of the best free countries. So my family is in Bhutan, and they are very happy. But we are not suffered anything. But
a lot of people have. 1.2 million people have died.
Overall Tibetans really suffered.
And it's a thing that
the world... they're suffering right now.
Absolutely. And it's a thing that the world should be aware of. Now, we got to move on, okay, because there's so much to talk about. 4 times the size of Texas. That's a huge country. Largest uranium deposits in the world, apparently. Interesting.
Yes, it's full of natural resources,
a lot of
unexploited.
Right.
And that was the one reason the Chinese were attracted.
Right.
And the British played a lot of roles because they wanted to continue holding India. And then they did not want to have their czarists from Russia. So they saw danger, the Russians may be coming down. So the British wanted Chinese to come and take over Tibet.
The great game that the colonialists played upon the benighted masses of the world. And there's still
1902.
I submit the plutocrats are still doing it upon the benighted masses of the world, and they may be yet having a big change that's going to come. But that's another issue. That's a big issue. Maybe that's a thing for the larger time. But it may be that a system that's in place that is not really going to be able to address the full needs of the people in a liberated way and they don't have a vision. I would submit the leaders of the world that are walking with such big loots don't have a vision that's going to be adequately able to work. But good luck in keeping political faith and faith with the cultural traditions and so forth, one of which is music. You are a music, and we have a CD you brought. You are a musician.
Yes.
And as I'm not mistaken, you collaborated with Philip Glass?
Yes.
In a film for Martin Scorsese?
Yes, that film is known as Kundun.
Kundun.
And I'm sure it's screened throughout this country. And once in a while you will see on the television, so like a channel, Fox News, Channel 11, frequently they air it.
Or you could find it on a DVD, or you could find it at Blockbuster. It's Martin Scorsese, famous director.
Yes.
And you and Philip Glass did the music for that.
Yes.
So you are a musician. And tell me about the movie quick, and then we want to talk about music, and we have culture, and you've got your... What do you call this machine?
That we call it Tungchen.
Tungchen.
Long horn.
Long horn.
And in fact, I played this in that movie Kundun.
You did?
Yes,
you played it in not in the score. You weren't on the screen. You weren't on the film.
I'm not in the film.
Not film. The film. Your representation is in the film. You played the music.
Music, yes.
Okay. And what is this instrument? Maybe you could talk about it, and then.
This is the long horn. And
okay. No, this is. You can see it and show it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's. You can pull out like this way, it becomes a long.
Okay.
Like this.
You're pulling it out now. Can you get it? Here, hold it up a little bit so they can see the full length of that. So you can see it's, look at that, it's extended out.
Right, it's extended, but this is small, kind of portable.
This is a portable one. They have them really much longer,
big,
right?
The large ones, they're really large. You can stand in the belly.
You can stand in it?
You can stand. And that's a very big.
And if the bigger it is, does it make a different sound?
Yes, it's louder.
Can you make a sound in that?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Now, what is this called? This thing is called what?
Dongchen.
Dongchen. This is the longhorn from Tibet.
Yes.
And it's being played by DHONDUP, who is a representative of the Dalai Lama and a Tibetan and understands this and played it. And, okay, let us hear a little bit what it sounds and then... That's beautiful. You can just see that. You can just see that going around the mountains and everything, right?
And
you play it up on top of a mountain and
on the mountains or the monasteries. You can play everywhere.
And is there a tradition? Is that what you were doing? Was that like a we have music songs and we have certain things, or we have Mozart operas, or we have Mozart. Is there a certain kind of music that can play? Is there a limitation on the amount of notational system for that?
It has its own notation, yes.
Yeah.
But Tibet has many different schools.
Schools of this?
Schools.
Yeah.
Music.
Music,
yes,
yeah.
Yes. One strange thing is that we have a kind of regional different notations.
Yeah.
But it is not universal.
So
I studied the graduate from a monastery known as Palpung.
Palpung.
And there is a Palpung Foundation. I'm also one of the directors there. And now the monastery is also in exile in India. And last year they won the Grammy Award. So we can have a piece of that music.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we do have that.
And actually,
I think we're going to try and maybe set things a little differently or something. But yeah, okay, so yeah, we have a CD, which is just audio, right?
Yes, audio.
And it is the group of, who is it? And we're going to hear some chanting.
Chanting,
and some
the monks that they won last year, the Grammy Award.
Now, this CD, the part we're hearing, or this is the CD that won the Grammy Award.
Yes.
In what class of music? I mean, this isn't rap.
No,
and this isn't rock and roll.
Folk music.
Folk music, cultural rock and roll, right? Or not rock and roll, but cultural music. Right. And it won the Grammy last year.
Yes, last year.
So we're going to play that kind of low and everything. We talk over
chanting.
It's a chanting of monks, right?
Monks, yes.
And is this machine in the back? Is this thing in the background?
No.
No, it's not. Okay, well, maybe we can set that up, and we'll just keep the picture on us. We might talk over it,
right,
just to give people a sense of that, okay?
Right.
Okay, maybe we could run that sound now. Let's bring that sound up, okay? Please. Monks, they're chanting.
Yes, yes.
Can you hear what they're saying? I mean, do they have words that mean it?
Yes, they're chanting. They're paying homage to their Guru Yoga.
Okay, let's hear some more. Let's hear some more. Can we hear some more? Can you bring up the sound? Yeah, make it a little louder. Listen.
It's a lineage prayer.
Lineage prayer.
Yes.
You can understand what they're saying.
Yes.
What language is that?
It's a Tibetan.
That's Tibet.
Yes.
They're singing in Tibetan.
Yes.
And it sounds like it's beautiful, isn't it?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's what they won last year. They have a music also, like they played this.
They play this also.
Also, yes.
Yeah.
We played the same piece. You know, because I learned this from that same school.
You learned this piece that they're singing. They're chanting. There's chanting.
Not chanting, but this music.
Oh, the music. Yes. I see. Right. And this is in the Buddhist tradition.
Yes.
And a good deal of the Tibetan culture is Buddhist-based, I guess, really, right?
Yeah, I think Buddhism is kind of way of life of Tibetan people. So everything is interwoven in terms of Buddhist spirituality.
Can you help me out a little bit? Buddhism is what is its relationship to Vedic, and is it a heresy? Was it a heresy of Hindu or the Vedic tradition? There are divisions. There's Zen. There's the different kinds. And what's its relationship to Lao Tzu? Where does it fit in? Because I just know it's a really very beautiful and peaceful kind of view of the universe and man's role in it. Could you maybe just touch on some of that? Because that's intrinsic to not only Tibet, but to a good deal of the Buddhist world and a lot of very well-meaning people around the world who are looking for some sort of an alternative to the materialism that is so in the saddle in the West now.
Right. Well, Buddhism was taught by Buddha, who was an Indian, and I think he was born more than 2,500 years ago.
Yeah.
So he was born in a clan of Shakya that was respected very high, because in those days there are a lot of question about the caste. If you are born in the lower kind of caste, you will not receive any respect. So to receive social and communal kind of respect, Buddha was born in a caste of Shakya, which is very high, is one of the highest. So he
was high-born.
Yes.
Had that Brahmin or something, or?
Yes, it's in the same clan like a Brahma.
That was in a Hindu society.
Kind of, yes,
or
priest.
Vedic, yeah.
Priest. It's a priest class.
Yeah, they have that caste system, which is hard for me to understand.
Yeah. But in India they have the caste.
Yes,
system, so
I know. Was it in opposition to the caste system, or was it like Luther was in opposition to the Catholic Church in the Western tradition?
Right.
You
well,
know?
Buddha's whole doctrine is against to the caste, or it is for equality. So Buddhism
is for equality.
Yes, equality, and everybody. There's Buddhism is based that every being has the Buddha nature.
Every being. So it's very, in
not
that
only
sense,
human being or man or woman.
the creatures.
But even creatures have the Buddha nature.
Right.
So sooner or later they can become enlightened.
Even they can become enlightened. That sort of thing. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
And it's very, in that sense, in a real sense, it's very democratic.
It did.
In the full sense of the word, rather than just the trappings that is often the case when people talk about it.
Whoever has the core knowledge and the spiritual realization, he can be on the top. You know.
And it's an important tradition. What differentiates it from the Vedic? I mean, we got to what, a billion and a half people in India now, growing rapidly. We have China. I don't know what's going to emerge spiritually in China when the materialism runs out of its luster and the material rewards, that sort of thing. But the role of the spiritual traditions of the East and that sort of thing, what do you see for those if we look out maybe a couple generations or something? These are truths and spiritual sense that people have held to for thousands of years. What is their future? Are they just going to be eliminated under a sea of materialistic concerns, as is the case seemingly in the world leadership halls now?
I think we are kind of unscrupulously very materialistic, the world itself. Therefore, that I think people have to be very careful. There must be a little bit of spiritual progress. It must be kind of, combined together. Then there will be real peace and harmony. But if the world should go after the trend of like unscrupulous,
which it's doing now.
Yeah, which is
I
doing
think,
right.
don't you? I see it that way.
Yes.
It's the only thing that matters in most people's mind. Because maybe they don't have any answers.
I believe that capitalism is needed, but in a kind of a healthy. We need money, we need materialism. But we cannot die for that, right? Because this materialism is to enrich, to comfort my life. So I cannot just die or sacrifice for that, to the means. So that's one my belief. And the second thing, you talked about the difference between Vedic and Buddhism. Buddhism is based on theory that we create everything. There's not one creator. Whereas the Hinduism and the Vedics, they believe that there is one that creates. So that's the difference. Buddhism does not believe in the one creator. Buddhism believes that we create. Everything is the human beings, mainly responsible in creation of good and bad.
So it could nest with a lot of humanist thinking that has a spiritual connotation.
So therefore
it could be part of a humanist tradition.
It is very humanity.
It's very, right.
Right, it's very humanity.
And compassion is very important.
Yes, and it emphasizes that everything is in the hands of the human beings who can think, good and bad. The world is going in a bad way, but if the human beings behave ourselves, right, still everything is in human hands.
Yeah, and that there's this notion of karma and dharma, these kind of, and it's a thing. Well, those larger spiritual questions beyond the purely materialistic are things that I think are beginning to emerge in a lot of quarters, and even as we come to the end where we may be transcending material scarcity and our technological ability to provide for everyone in a way, there are going to have to be some really lasting, eternal values that are going to become relevant to human identity, and it might be that many of those are carried by the Dalai Lama and by yourselves and by that Buddhist tradition, and the Tibetan struggle would be ones to which people could repair, and I congratulate you. Sorry for the suffering so many of your people have had to endure, but congratulate you all on maintaining your, maintaining that struggle, and people should all be aware of it, and I thank you very much for all of that.
Thank you.
And I certainly thank you for coming in and participating in conversations. It's always good to see you. I look forward to getting together and having some Tibetan food.
Right.
Okay? It's so good to see you, Don.
Yeah.
So good,
you,
always. And you're going to come to my party next year and play your what do you call that again?
Tungjin.
Tungjin.
Yes.
Okay, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful sound. Only scratch the surface of a huge subject. Thank you very much for helping to enlighten us in terms of some of that. And it's been your pleasure to have his perceptions. We invite you to tune in. We'll come back again tomorrow. That's it for this particular program. Once again, Don. I call you Don, but it's it's actually Dun Loop. No, Dunloop. And the names are, you don't want to take, you could go and change your name down at the City Hall to Smith. You don't want to do that.
No.
You don't want to.
I want to
maybe you could
preserve a little my identity.
Maybe if you want, you could change it to Chang. You could change it to Lin. You could change it to something Chinese. No, you don't want to do that.
That's why I run away from the Chinese.
Yeah, but you insist on holding on to your name and your culture and your tradition.
That's why, not to become a Chinese, I run away and try to be in a freedom.
Yes, I know.
If I want to be Chinese, I would remain in Tibet.
Yeah. So
change it to Mao or
don't change one hair for me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding you. You're not going to do any of that.
You're not my friend. You're changing me to give up my culture.
No, I'm not. I'm just making fun and fun. But I'm looking forward to. And I'm kidding you. And you said apparently if we come and visit with you, yak's a good meat. Is that true? Yak is good.
Well, to some yes, but some are not. I don't know.
Is it healthy?
It's very good. Yes.
It is healthy.
It's lean.
And it's a traditional thing in Tibet.
Tradition, they have yak meat. Like you have beef here in this country. So beef is popular here, right?
Yeah,
do you call that tradition?
Yeah. That's the tradition we have, but we don't have yak. Maybe we could start getting yak herds in America. They do bison. We used to have bison, buffalo.
Yeah.
They would do that.
Maybe the same meat, maybe.
What is the diet in Tibet? Do they eat meat? And yak is a mainstay of the meat. And milk. You drink the milk.
Milk, yes.